Welcome back to the hashtag I'm My Everywhere show. I got the pleasure and honor of having Jasmine and Justin today.
Thanks for having us.
You guys are big in the IBMI space. You were one of the major speakers at Power Up. This is a exciting group to have on, and I think we're looking forward to having a big conversation about the future of IBMI, specifically around N2I. I think that's a very important topic for the community at large. Justin and Jasmine, whoever wants to get started here, may want to share a little bit about who you guys are and then go segue into N2I.
I'm Justin Becker. I graduated with a software engineering degree with a special focus on RPG in 2024. I joined the platform in 2025, though I was attending events, conferences, and prior to graduation, so I was sort of acquainted with it. I currently sit on the Common Education Foundation board as a member, and I have been an N2I mentee for going on 2 years now. Jasmine is my N2I mentor.
Wow. And Jasmine, how about yourself?
I've been on the platform for, I think, just under 20 years. From Australia originally, worked at Auto and General Insurance and left as the tech lead architect. Mainly focused on modernization, API building, and architecting solutions. Now I'm the vice president of technology for MR Williams. So I've been here for 5 years, absolutely loving it. My focus is business gamification and making sure that the PMI is at the forefront of everything we do, as well as doing new apps and new development and to bring it to a wider audience.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for sharing all that. And maybe you guys could share how you guys got together, how you guys know each other.
I think Marina actually introduced us through N2I. When I first came to the US, I went to Power Up and met Mike Pavlak and Marina Schwenk and found out about this awesome little community in common. Was told that they were looking for mentors. That's something that I've always been really passionate about. Since I left the large company, I didn't have any junior developers to mentor anymore. But Justin was introduced to me. We hit it off immediately. So we cover a broad range of topics like technical implementations, career decisions, finishing school, finding work. Maybe Justin can give a little bit more about his perception.
I studied under Shar Parker, who's like an OG RPG gal, and introduced me to Marina. And after she and I talked for a little bit, she reached out a little after the conference and said, "Hey, I know you're really new to the platform. Are you interested in mentorship? We have this program called N2I, and I had the perfect person to match you up with." And I was like, "Absolutely. I'll take all the help I can get. Mentorship is fantastic." Shortly after that, she hooked me up with Jasmine, and we've been chatting. Like I said, I think 2 years now, we've been meeting almost every week to discuss everything from career pathways, what sort of frameworks to learn, helping with errors and debugging, teaching me things that were outside our curriculums. Any questions that I had about the platform or even the field in general, she was able to answer for me. And we've just gone back and forth over the years.
Well, Justin, as you are new to the platform, maybe you could share a little experience, what it's like to get started and any takeaways that you may want to share with the community.
Who have had the path into the platform that I did, was given the opportunity to attend several conferences as a student, which allowed me to network with a lot of the right people. It was really beneficial to learn from people like Simon Hutchinson and Liam Allen. I just want to say that a community like this is so rare, where your professor can say, "Hey, go to this conference. The guy who wrote your textbook is going to be there." But I could walk right up to Jim Buck and say, "Is this a cult? Because you guys are so happy to be here." And he said, "Yeah, it's a cult. Welcome to the fold." So I was how passionate people were about the platform before joining it. But I interfaced with the community, like I said, 10 weeks into my program very early on. And I saw how passionate people were about the platform. And I saw how eager people were to help onboard new people, especially relatively younger devs like myself. The things that drew me, and I believe will keep me here, is the passion of the community, the willingness to help, and the innovation that's going on right now is really exciting with Watson X and the Code for I extension. All these sorts of things. It's like drinking from the fire hose when you first onboard onto the platform. But it was enough to intrigue me, and I can't credit the community enough for being as accepting and passionate as they are. So I hope that answers the question.
He's being very humble. I think his curriculum and what he's been focusing on specifically has set him up to be a unicorn in our space, in our community. But was it 8 languages you did, Justin? 8 different? 6 different languages. It was a few.
Hard to remember, like everything, C# to Core C to
Java.
Java, different types of SQL. So yeah, there's a couple different things. Yeah.
So I think that broad network of different languages, as well as the community exposure, really set him up to be an asset to the community going forward. And I think that is fantastic for us.
Yeah. And that is one thing that we are missing, is that a lot of people are focused only on RPG or even some situations COBOL or any of the more legacy languages. Being able to use open source and what's in a Code for I and all the other things we have is really, really relevant and unicorn status. Good for you, Justin. So another question for you, Jasmine, is that it's similar, but I think it's a little different for you, is that you've been around the block for a while, as long as others, but you've been around. Why are you still involved in IBMI? There's so many other platforms. Why specifically choosing to try to keep the IBMI in place?
Yeah, it's actually a question I get asked quite a bit. I've had exposure to a number of different platforms, AWS, Azure, many different languages. I think I'm up to 12 or 14 different languages that I've worked with specifically. But for me personally, the IBMI has been the most stable, the most reliable. I have the most fun with it. It's flexible. I don't have to worry about it dying in the middle of the night or AWS going down and you're just waiting for an engineer in a different state to fix something for you. So I have all the tools at my fingertips. And then there is that solid community as well. So there is that connection. I feel engaged with what I'm doing and the people that I work with, even if we work in different countries or different states. The biggest draw for me is making sure that I can continue the legacy of developers who've come before me. So I have great respect for everyone who's been developing on the platform for the last 30 years. And with other languages, you have to rewrite the code every year, every 2 years to make sure that you're up to date, to make sure it still runs. Whereas I've worked on code that's older than I am. And that to me is such a fascinating and awesome legacy to be part of. And to just know that something I write today could be running 60 years down the track, possible that still able to run.
Yeah, one of the things I want to ask you about is you mentioned that it's fun. I've never heard anyone call it fun. Can you share with me, what does that mean for fun for you?
I enjoy it. I've got so many different languages. I've got so many different tools that I can play with every day that every day is an exciting thing. I should say most days are exciting.
Wow.
When things up.
Wow. One thing for you, and I think this is an interesting, having both of you on, is you could describe a little bit more in depth about your relationship and how the mentorship works. Is it just Justin, you're learning from Jasmine, or are you teaching? Is it a two-way street? How does that work?
Absolutely. Justin, because he is so new to the platform and I don't get to develop as much as I used to because of my role now, but Justin will go out and play with new tools and find these awesome new ways of doing things and bring it to me and say, do you know anything about this? I've never heard of it. He'll show it to me. I'll definitely learn so much from him. It is a symbiotic relationship, I would say. You may disagree, but I feel like our relationship and any mentees that I've had as well, it's never just purely, I'm your teacher, you're my student. We get along on a personal basis, so we know each other's families. We talk about many things like career path and making those big life decisions, but it's definitely back and forth. Maybe Justin, you might have a different take.
I feel I've been very fortunate to be set up for success on the platform. And one of the things that I proselytize about N2I, one of the things I always touch on is that with most any other language, Python, JavaScript, C#, it doesn't matter. You can essentially learn it through self-study. You can go through a paid program, some sort of boot camp curriculum, and you can learn it on YouTube. So my interactions with Jasmine she says there's a give and a take, but I've taken a lot more than I think I've given. And I've learned how to, as I've gone back and forth with Jasmine, I've learned how to speak to somebody at a higher level of knowledge and how to ask the right questions. Because N2I, you get out of it what you put in, right? So you're not going to hit your N2I mentor up and like, hey, my program's broken. Right? You have to come and explain the steps that you've taken. You have to come and explain what you don't understand and ask for it in terms that you do understand and find overlapping knowledge between you and your mentor And that is just basic communication, but extended into the tech world. And that's benefited me in non-tech areas of my life, right? So N2I has been a learning experience on a lot of different fronts. IBMI specifically, but when it comes to programming in general, I've learned about better practices from Jasmine. I've learned about the sorts of things in RP that don't seem to have analogs in other programming languages. She was able to explain things to me in terms of languages that I already knew, which you can talk to ChatGPT all you want. It's probably not going to be able to explain that to you. Maybe Watson will. I haven't gotten to tinker with it yet, but I'll say it again, the best way to learn on this platform is from somebody that already knows the platform.
Wow, makes sense. How can we tell more people about N2I? How do we get more people aware of it, and how do we get more people involved in it?
There's two really big factors to it. The first one is we always have once per month get together, whether an experienced person giving some talk on a particular topic, or we have our networking sessions where everyone can join, new and old, and get together and talk about some of the issues or ask questions. So once a month, that is that constant get together from community. The second piece of that is, I would say, don't be afraid to bring people in the platform, introducing new students, introducing people from your business, or hiring straight from college, even if they don't know anything about the IBMI. Bring these new people to the platform, get them introduced to N2I, and then you'll have that community around them to support them and support their longevity on the platform.
Yeah. And Jasmine, I'm just curious, have you ever hired someone that was directly out of college without having any IBMI experience?
Multiple. I was trained internally based on my business knowledge to the technical side of things. My foundation of where I come from the mentoring perspective. So I advocated quite heavily in my previous position to bring in new developers or people with no development skills whatsoever who knew the business, train them in RPG, train them in the platform, and get them out into the world. But in my current role, I've hired 4 or 5 so far. So basically, most of my hires, I always keep 1 or 2 seniors on staff, because that's a great way to share the knowledge, to keep that around so it's not all reliant on myself or the community. But most of my hires will be brand new, whether they're React developers, JavaScript developers, straight from college, so they may have a smattering of PHP or other languages, C#. But really, I don't discriminate against whatever language they know. As long as they have that attitude of wanting to learn and an interest, I will welcome them with open arms.
Wow. I think that's a really refreshing take on the commute and how you go about hiring, because I think that when we look around and everyone's like, I want 20 years of experience. And I think that's the biggest challenge we have, is that you're looking at more 30 or 40 years of experience at this point. And that means they have very limited lifespan and runway left. And just so for you, as you joined, like, what is that like for you? And I mean, you mentioned the community, you mentioned N2I, but for you, from being hired on, like, what was that learning curve for you? How was your experience when you started, and how have you grown?
So I hadn't even finished my first semester and I was getting job offers already. So that to me spoke to an urgent need within the community to bring in new talent. And the way it was described to me by multiple people in the community was, we have a changing of the guard happening and set to continue to happen within the next few years, where these wizards, right, these senior engineers are about to retire and they've not passed on their knowledge to anybody else. We haven't taken on any juniors. And we need talent to replace these people, right? The approach has been to hit colleges, right? Find students who are in RPG programs. But I would say that should extend to any programming student at all. If they have an understanding of the concepts of programming, you can teach them RPG, you can teach them CL, you can get them set up for success, especially if they join N2I. And then you're not completely responsible for their learning, right? They've got somebody else to lean on. It's another asset. I found that the pedigree is not as important in this community. It's really about a willingness to ask the right questions, to learn the right things, to be willing to do, as Jasmine said, this sort of digital archaeology, where you're going back through this code that for me in many circumstances is older than I am. So not being obsessed with the new bleeding edge thing seems to be something that the community values. So my experience, the jobs are there, people are looking for you. You just have to interface with the right people. You have to be willing to put yourself out there, and you have to be willing to learn and not attach yourself to any specific technology or adjacent technology.
Yeah, that sounds exactly like what Jasmine, you were saying earlier, is that it's really all about the developers interested. And that's all that really matters. It's not really so much about anything else.
I mean, to extend on it a little bit, I think a lot of us who've been on the platform for a while, it's not an embarrassment, but I feel like there is a level of protection that we feel toward the green screens and the way that we've done things in the past. So I always find that people are a little afraid to bring people who haven't been exposed. It works wonderfully. The thing to remember is that a lot of these kids work with Linux, terminal development. It's not that different to everything else. And you shouldn't be ashamed. You should be proud of this platform that has supported your company for the last 20, 30, 40 years. And bringing people in with that awkward or embarrassed state is going to make new developers who have no idea what it is feel poorly about the system or feel that they are maybe better looking at Google or AWS. So if you come out here confident and proud of the system, and this is the platform that they will be on potentially for 30, 40 years themselves, it can sustain their entire career. And that's something that we should really push as more senior developers.
I think that's a really interesting conversation. And this is something which I actually noticed right away, is that the way I got really involved in the IBMI community was by creating this little thing called hashtag IBMI Everywhere. I was taking pictures of items from around the house, of items from companies that run IBMI. And the reason why I knew that was going to be successful is, to your point, Jasmine, is that people feel embarrassed about the platform. Yeah, I run on this platform you may never heard of. It's called IBMI. It's this thing that runs the entire world, but no one wants to talk about it. And how do we change that stigma?
Being proud of it. Get more people introduced to it. Don't be afraid to talk about it. And stop referring to it as the AS400. Give it the modern approach that we've had the support from IBM. Talk about it positively, get it out there, bring new developers to the platform, and advocate more for yourself and your development that you've done for your entire career.
Yeah. Just on your end, being a consultant in your role, you see everything. And you see the good, bad, and ugly. From your perspective, how would you suggest to make this a happier place for IBMI?
I would say that being open to the new ways that younger devs are doing things is paramount, right? If you bring a Python dev on and say, hey, you're going to connect to this box through VS Code, they're going to be like, oh, cool, I already know VS Code. So they're just going to grab that extension. So things like that, being open to letting devs use new tools, being open to new ways of doing things. Some of the more experienced devs have the sort of mindset of, you can't have too many variables because we need to manage memory properly. And it's not really an issue, right? And don't force devs to keep variable names to 10 characters or less. We can have long descriptive variable names now so that when you're debugging through somebody else's program, you're looking at a jumble of letters and numbers and unnamed indicators and trying to figure out what's going on. So making it more accessible can even just be as easy as at first tolerating and then finally accepting that the paradigms are sort of shifting and allowing new devs to start to take over some architecture decisions. And that gives us a sense of agency that makes us feel invested in the platform, makes us feel we're becoming a part of that legacy, that history of IBMI.
Yeah, I think one thing you mentioned is very relevant, is that having the ability to be using VS Code and using it as part of your environment, it's inviting to the new developers is very relevant to many. As you mentioned, this is something that's relevant to you, and I would assume it's relevant to many others. And I think that's a big point for a lot of companies that have been historically not using VS Code or even RDI for that matter, able to get more involved with that. We're going to shift topics right now. Who wants to share their best IBMI story? Jasmine,
you can go, Justin. Justin can go first.
Some stories which may or may not be interesting, but my personal favorite story, gleaming example of why mentorship is imperative when you're learning this platform and how it can get you from spending days or even weeks on a problem to you ping your mentor and you're through it in 30 minutes. This is from my college days. I was still learning RPG, learning printer files and display files and all that sort of thing. I'd really only done batch programs up to this point. I hadn't really done anything interactive. So I was working on one of my first printer files, and to save some time, because I was taking a lot of credits per semester, I was taking almost double full time. So I was taking around 18 credits or something per semester. I'm cutting corners where I can. Jim Buck's books, they're fantastic. They have great examples. So I tended to just snag those examples and paste them into my IDE and start working off those, tweaking values and tweaking variable names as needed. So I did that with a printer file, and I'm working in green screen because we've not yet been introduced to RDI or VS Code or anything. So I'm just working in the green screen. I've got this little green terminal window. I start changing stuff, and then I go to compile, and I'm looking at it, and it looks just like the example, and I cannot for the life of me figure out why it won't compile. It keeps throwing all these crazy errors. I sit down on a Zoom call with my instructor, and she and I go over it for maybe 2.5 hours, where she's like, all right, try this to compile again. Oh, it's still not working. I don't understand what these errors are that you're getting. It all looks fine to me. So finally, I have my meeting with Jasmine that Friday, and I say, can you help me out with this? I am just struggling. My instructor couldn't figure it out. The deadline's coming up. I just can't get this thing figured out. My instructor's telling me, I don't know why you're having so many issues with this. The other students have already finished this. And I'm falling behind. What is so hard about this? So Jasmine looks at it for about 15, 20 minutes, and she's sort of squinting at it, and she goes, can you hit F20 and move the screen over a little bit so I can see what's on the right side of the screen? I was like, there's a right side of the screen? I realized that little narrow window that I got was just half of the screen, right? So then we shift F20 over, and there's a bunch of garbage left over from it was just that experience on the platform of going you need to F20 over and look at what's going on the other side of your screen. That even somebody as experienced as my instructor, it didn't click to do that, right? So that was just such a silly thing to have issues with that Jix was able to help me solve in 30 minutes or less.
You're lucky to have a mentor who's made many mistakes.
Yeah, I get to learn from your mistakes and make less myself.
So Jasmine, it's your turn to shine.
Last year, 2023, my company was actually hit with ransomware. Someone broke in from Russia, populated some ransomware into a couple of machines, and then it just spread like wildfire. I think at the time we had about 17 or 19 Windows servers that were taken down completely. Obviously, my initial fear is, oh my goodness, they've got into the IBM. I'm on the phone to IBM. We lock the system down immediately, just out of sheer panic. And then I worked with Steve Pitcher to just assess whether we had any vulnerabilities, any attacks, any corrupt files on our IBM and what I needed to do. After that clear out, the machine was back up and running. So we were able to continue running our business the next day. So there was a team of my developers as well as some customer support people who were doing the manual stuff that the Windows computers did, but the IBM was perfect. So it kept running. It kept the business going. It made sure that we weren't one of the statistics of the companies who were actually shut down forever. That really changed the perspective of everyone in my business. It really changed the perception of our business. And now our executive team have no interest in moving away from the platform whatsoever. It was one of the worst things that ever happened to the company, but it really made us more solid and really solidified the IBMI's presence within our entire ecosystem.
One more question for you. And I think that, Jasmine, you are the bleeding edge of seeing what the future of IBMI and where it's going. And you want to share a little bit about your predictions and where you see the platform. And then Justin, we'll head over to you. Jasmine, why don't you start with the future of IBMI?
I mean, what's in Code Assistant for I is really where I think we're going to be going in the next at least 12 to 18 months. I think it's going to be a huge productivity boost for senior and junior developers. It's going to help people get onto the platform. My experience with it alone in the alpha testing was incredible. So I have some really good statistics that have helped my team out, even just in the few months that I worked with it. So for me, I really think that is the immediate future, but then also just the integration into open source languages and new tool sets that are available. That, in my mind, is really where the next couple of years are going to be going.
Yeah, that's spectacular. And Justin, for you.
Yeah, so the advent of LLMs, large language model, has been a good and a bad thing for a lot of developers who were starting to learn around the time that it came out. Because you can use it in what I think is the right way. I'm biased because it's the way that I used it, which is as sort of a enhanced Google that you can have a conversation with, treat it like a tutor, right? Ask questions, gain better understanding, fact check what it's telling you. It can make some stuff up, but for the most part, you can use it to learn a lot of things about a lot of different languages, can go search that documentation for you so you don't have to go search Stack Exchange or read through their doc. And then, the people that just try to, vibe code or just copy and paste whatever it says without actually understanding what it does or thinking about the larger architectural picture of what they're building. So I think Watson X is going to be a boon for a lot of people who are trying to join the platform and need that AI tutor to sort of bounce ideas off, because you can't go and talk to a lot of these other LLMs and get good answers. But if Watson X is trained on IBMI's code, then you're going to get good answers, a model that you can ask questions in terms of other platforms that you understand and have it explain it back to you. In and of itself is going to be a huge part of the platform going forward. The integration with adjacent technology. So the ability to use things like React.js as your front end and Python middleware to where your customer doesn't even know that there was ever a green screen application that this web app is now serving the functions of. So you can break these business logic into RPG microservices and have this modern architecture. And that's the way paradigms that the industry as a whole is shifting into. So there's nothing stopping IBMI from doing that. And I think that there is a push to do so, especially as we're bringing on new developers who are trained in these best practices according to the current standard of evidence. And I think that that'll be a big part of the platform going forward.
I was just going to say another thought as well is that extending on Justin, what you're saying there about the new languages, I don't think people are going to be developing green screens as much anymore. And I don't think we should. That's a lot of the perception where it is a legacy platform because it has the terminal-based interface. Whereas if we are going to have a retirement cliff in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to lose a lot of people off the platform. So the next generation of developers and influencers in our community need to come through the ranks now. And it doesn't have to be from an IBM background. It could be from any kind of background, especially if we are focusing on integrating more with open source languages. So I think we will see more upcoming stars in the community who are stepping up and sharing their technical knowledge and experience from other platforms. And I think we need to be prepared as well. So expect the retirement cliff, prepare now. Don't wait for it to happen, because you don't want to be in the same situation I was where everybody retired at once and we had to build a team from scratch. So.
Yes. I think, Jasmine, what you ended off with was really good. Your concern about the retirement cliff is so important. Maybe you could share what that was like when you had that retirement cliff. What was that like?
Terrifying, first of all. To give a little bit of background with that, I was actually on maternity leave when it happened. My first child was out for 3 months, and I had been talking with my boss. So when I was hired, I knew that I would be taking his position eventually. But it was of the understanding it would be in 5 years' time. And at this point, it was about 18 months, 2 years in. And he just said, I don't want to do this anymore. I need to step back and focus on my life. Now's the time. When you come back from maternity leave, you're going to take over from my role. And he'd been at the company, I think, for 17 years at that time. So that was one. And then just before he announced it, our other RPG senior developer said he just hit the retirement age. He's peacing out in 6 weeks. And then we had our other senior developer who'd been at the company for 22 years. He had some family issues and said, I can't work now. I don't need to work. I'm going to be retiring in 2 weeks. So all three, and we were a small team. So I was the last developer. We had a junior developer as well that I had just hired. All three senior developers, and then myself, they all left. They all retired within 6 weeks of each other. So I went from having a full team of people who'd been working for the business for over 10 years, 15 to 20 something years, to no one. So I was on leave, postpartum, I had my baby with me, and I was just like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. I had been told that the market was awful for hiring developers. I ended up hiring my first developer within 3 weeks. So I had a very flexible role. I went remote, just within the state. One developer immediately. The next one was 6 weeks after that, 3 weeks after that point. So I got my two senior developers, and then I got junior developers. So I had web developers, I had a React C# developer. And I just focused on training people who were at the business who knew other languages besides the IBMI.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting story. And I think it's relevant because what you did was you were forced into doing this. But wouldn't it be nice if you were able to pair it and you didn't have to be like scrambling?
That was one part where I was so thankful for my previous boss, because he knew he had a plan that he was retiring. It came a little quicker than we expected, but he had trained. So he had spent that whole time I'd been employed, training me on the business, training me on the system, and really making sure that he passed his knowledge on. And he still helps me every day. He's like a father to me. He's one of the best people in the world. He 100% makes sure that I have all the knowledge that I need to continue. And having that connection and having that love of the platform as well as care for other people in your role was fantastic for me. I don't see many people planning succession plans though anymore. None of us are guaranteed any time on this earth. It can happen at any time. You should really make sure all the time that there's continuity in carrying on your legacy at any company.
Yeah, and Justin, for you, you're probably coming in a lot of times that during the worst of times. How do you manage that? When you're coming in and you're learning basically 20, 30 years of code and you're like, now what?
Yeah, the phrases I hear commonly are trial by fire, throwing you in the deep end, and drinking from the fire hose, right? I hear these three phrases almost every. With a lot of this software that I'm working with, it's really, none of it's documented. I don't want to say none of it's documented, but not enough of it is documented. So your documentation is sitting in some senior dev's head, and if he does not write that down or impart it to somebody, once they're gone, it's gone. So I have not been hesitant to reach out to developers who I know had some hand in writing certain parts of the code base and go, hey, what can you tell me about this? Because I know that it's not going to last. My access to that knowledge is going to go away at some point, and I'm going to have to rebuild that on my own through sheer tyranny of will, just reading through things and writing it down. So in a lot of my experience, I'm learning straight from the seniors before it's too late. I wanted to ask if we can, real quick before we sign off for the day, make it clear how to sign up for N2I and make it clear how to become a mentee or become a mentor. And I don't want to...
Do you know how, Justin? I'll let you say it.
Oh, yeah.
Go for it, Justin.
Oh, okay. So if you're interested in N2I mentorship, either as a mentee or as a mentor, if you've got 6 years or less of experience on the platform, you qualify to be a mentee. And it doesn't matter if you're brand new to IBMI or maybe you've been in sysadmin for 4 years and you're looking to learn a little bit more. You want to get more into the programming side of things. You can go to common.org, go look under their community tab in the navigation bar and click on N2I. And that's going to take you to the N2I portion of the site where you can submit an application, and they're gonna look at who would be a good match for you. So it's nothing but benefits. It costs you nothing. And you have everything to gain from it. So I can't recommend it enough.
Yeah, I love that, Justin. Well, that's a great place to end it. Really appreciate your time, guys. And you guys know where to find me. Thanks so much, and talk to y'all soon.